Hello and welcome to another Tom Talk Live. It's good to have you guys here this evening. Hope you guys are doing wonderful today. I'm excited about this one. This is a topic that I'm going to be talking about tonight that I have struggled with a lot, and I've been doing a lot of work in this area. And so, if this is an area that you need help with, this is a good episode to show up for. But I do want to invite you all to go ahead and say hello in the chat. Let me get my chat box open if I can remember. There we go. Oh, we got Jacob here. Great. How is it going? Good to see you. Good to have you here. Yeah, I love doing the live streams. I love the interaction. So yeah, do please feel free to chime in and share whatever you feel comfortable sharing. And that's really the beauty of doing live streams. And so it's a lot of fun having that. But today, or this evening rather, we're going to be talking about letting go of control. Letting go of control. And so this is an area for me that I am definitely a person that likes to be in control. So for me, like anytime we're going somewhere, me and my family, I'm always the one driving pretty much. Like 99% of the time, I want to be in control behind the wheel, driving where we're going. I'm okay for the most part riding with other people. Like that doesn't bother me too much, but my preference is always to kind of be the one in the driver's seat. And I've found that that's just one example, but this really shows up in a lot of different ways where a lot of times I trust myself more than others. I like to be in control of outcomes of situations. And sometimes that's fine, right? Like that works for me in many ways. It makes me feel comfortable. But then there's situations where it's not healthy, right? There's situations where it creates problems for me. And so that's kind of what we're going to be talking about this evening. So let me know in the chat, yeah, if this is something that you have an issue with, maybe, maybe not. But let me know if it is. I did realize that one of the things that I don't care for doing is flying. So, like, commercial airliners, like going places. I've flown a bunch. I've flown to a lot of different places. I've been doing it since I was, a kid. But it is definitely not something I enjoy doing. And I think one of the reasons, as I was kind of thinking about it more, I think part of that is because I'm so out of control in that whole situation, right? Like I'm back there in the back with the passengers, don't really know what's happening, don't know what's going on. So if there's like a sudden shake or shimmy or a weird sound or whatever, I don't know what's happening. Is the plane falling apart? I don't know. Are we about to die? Like it just kind of escalates. And it's because I have no control, absolutely none. And I think like, if I was, it's not just about flying. That's the problem for me. It's about the fact that I'm not in control. So I think that if I was to be the pilot, right? Like if I was able to go through that whole process and get my pilot's license and I was the one in control, I think I would be okay with that. Even though it's the same situation, right? If I'm the one in control, I know what's happening, I can see everything and know what's going on. I think that would give me a lot more sense of peace, right? So it's hard for me in many ways to be in a situation where I have no control, and yet how often does that happen? All the time, right? We're constantly in situations where we have little to no control. So we're going to be talking about that and kind of how to work on letting go of some of that. What are some tools and mindset shifts that we can implement that will kind of help us as we deal with kind of letting go of control. And so let's talk about why is it that we crave it? I'm on the wrong slide. Why do we crave control? And I think that's probably maybe a little different for each one of us. Maybe we have kind of different situations, different kind of backgrounds on why it is that we like being in control. But I think it kind of boils down to the idea that, we like to be able to determine the outcomes, right? Like we have kind of what we want to happen, a set kind of way that we think things should be done, or a certain way we want things to play out. And so we try to, you know, um, put our control, our ability to control that situation, our ability to kind of manipulate things, and that's kind of part of it, right? There's manipulation involved, and sometimes, in some ways, where we want things to be a certain way. And I think on one hand, that's natural, right? I think, we have the ability to control some things. And we're going to talk about that more, what we control, what we can't control. But honestly, it gets to be exhausting, doesn't it? After a while, trying to be in control and not being able to be in control, like it kind of creates such a drain on us. And so part of it is just like this incredible weight that we have to carry, right? Those of us who kind of deal with this and feel like we have to be in control of everything, it can be a burden, right? It can be a tremendous weight to carry, that we can learn to let go of. And then in some ways, it can create a great deal of frustration. So, what are some of the things that we like to control? We like to control outcomes, like I talked about. So, maybe something that we're working towards, maybe it has to do with our job, maybe it has to do with our family life, personal life, whatever it is. There's a certain outcome we're trying to achieve, and so we're putting our effort into that. We've maybe put a plan in place. We're trying to work towards this outcome. Sometimes it's with people. Sometimes we like to control aspects of our partners, of our kids, of our coworkers, right? And we want there to be a certain way things go in those relationships. And so we do our best to implement control over that. And that's, in a lot of ways, I think that can be unhealthy. That's one of the areas that we're going to talk about that can tend to be unhealthy. And that's where the manipulation can kind of be involved, because we're trying to get someone else to do what we want them to do. And sometimes we disregard what it is that they want. And then sometimes it's just general circumstances, right? I went to a wedding not too long ago, and it was an outdoor wedding. And one of the concerns was the weather, right? What if it rains? What are you going to do? And it actually did rain, but thankfully it cleared up just in time for them to be able to have the wedding. And it was a beautiful wedding. But that's one of those, things that's out of our control. We can't control the weather. We can't control the traffic. We can't control so many different things. And it becomes kind of a difficult time for us, right? And so that's kind of what we're going to be looking at next is, so what is the cost, right? What is the cost of trying to control things that we can't? I got a typo there. I should say that we can't. And so what is the cost of it, right? There is a cost involved. And that cost is our own kind of mental and physical health in a lot of ways, and even spiritual health, right? Because we are trying so hard to get a certain outcome. And when it doesn't go that way, and when things are out of our control, it can be very upsetting, especially to the person that likes to be in control a lot. And so it can cause stress, it can cause burnout, it can cause restlessness, right? There's a lot of different kind of like physical things that we can feel from that. And from emotional standpoint, it creates resentments, right? Especially in concerning to relationships, if we are wanting our significant other or our children, family members, right, to behave a certain way, to do certain things, and they don't, right, that can create resentment. And a lot of things that I'm talking about this evening kind of tied to a little bit to my last week's Tom Talk Live, when I was talking about expectations, right? So I think as I was kind of getting through that episode, I was kind of thinking a lot about the control that we like to have, right? I feel like those two things are connected in some ways. And so that's kind of what made me decide to move into this area, because I think there was more to uncover here, right? And so that cost of feeling like we need to be in control at all times, be in control of things we can't, right? It creates a lot of problems for us, right? Conflict and anxiety, and can create distance in our relationships. It can cause people to not want to be around us if we're too controlling, right? People don't like that. They They have their own desires and things that they want. And if we're trying to put our control on them, just like we wouldn't want that from somebody else, right? We don't want someone else to try to manipulate us into doing something. So, and obviously, I'm talking about it in kind of a negative way. So, what is okay to control, right? I think there are some things that it's okay for us to have control over certain things, and basically, and I'm going to talk about this a little bit more in a minute. When it comes to us, right? If it comes to something that I'm doing, I'm thinking, I'm feeling, right? This is what I need to be in control of. Um, and so let's talk about that a little bit more, right? Let's talk about our circle of control. These are the things that we are able to control. And I think this is a good exercise, even. So, what you can do is you can draw two circles, right? Two concentric circles. You have the inner circle and the outer circle. The inner circle is things within my control, right? These are the things that I am able to control. And pretty much all of the things that go inside of that circle have to do with you, right? The things that you are able to control. You can control yourself. You can control what you do, what you say, your actions, your thoughts, right? For the most part, we don't have absolute control over every aspect of ourselves. That can be challenging, and maybe that's a whole nother Tom talk. But basically, when it comes to us, right, we have control over ourselves. And then things that are outside of our control, right? Have a list for that too, right? Have a list of the things that are other people's choices, what other people choose to do, or outcomes that you are not able to control, right? It's good to kind of clarify that. That might seem like a silly thing or a simple thing to do, but I think it can be very powerful to really just write out what it is we're able to control and what it is we're not. That way you can see black and white, plain to see what it is that you're responsible for and what you're not responsible for. The things that you are going to have to carry and the things that you don't have to carry, the things that you can let go of. These are the things that you don't have to worry about anymore. And I find so often when it comes to worrying, and concern and anxiety and all that, we're so worried about things that we have absolutely no control over, which is crazy, right? It's crazy to think that we would spend so much time and energy into something that we have absolutely no ability to affect the outcome of, right? If we can't affect the outcome of it, yet we're so worried about it, we're so concerned about it, and to a certain degree, I think sometimes it's understandable because that's the circle of control is what we control. And there's another circle, and I'm not going to go into this one too much, but it's called the circle of concern, right? The things that we're concerned about that we don't have control over, but we're still concerned, right? Like we're concerned about maybe the weather that's coming. Maybe there's supposed to be some bad weather. We're concerned about that. Maybe we're concerned about something that's going on in the government, something that's going on in different parts of the world. There's several things that we can be concerned about that we have no control over. And it's understandable to have that concern, but how much energy we put into that, that is something that's in our control, right? We can decide how much time and energy we're going to put into those things that are in that outer circle, those things that are outside of our control. So decide for yourself, right? How much do you want to invest into things that are not within your control? And instead, I encourage you to redirect that to things that you can control, right? I mean, that just makes sense to actually spend your time and energy working on the things that you can actually affect. And it starts within, right? It starts with us, right? So with that in mind, let's look at a few different shifts that we can make, some mindset shifts to help let go of those things that we have no control over. So these are some good ones. I think these were going to help. As I've kind of been working through this myself, I found these to be very powerful, very helpful. So let's talk about them a little bit. So the first one is a shift from control to trust, right? Especially in relationships, and especially in relationships with people that we care about and that we love. Instead of trying to control others and what they do, we should rather trust them, right? it's okay if we share what it is we would like to see happen, right? If there's certain things that, we think it best to go a certain way, right? To have that discussion, to share that with our significant others, with our family members, friends, loved ones, whoever it is, coworkers, right? Those important relationships to us, to share what it is we want. But then at a certain point, we can't control them, right? We're going to have to let them do what they're going to do. We're going to have to let them have their own choices and their own desires and what they want, and then trust them, right? And so moving from a place of needing control to a place of fostering trust is a huge mindset shift that I think will help us, right? So as we are moving from control to trust, we're going to see the amount of peace we have increase exponentially. Because trust is knowing that, hey, this person's not going to do it perfectly, but I know they care about me and they're going to work things out in a way that's okay for us both, right? And maybe it doesn't always work that way because we're all human, we all make mistakes. But if you don't trust anybody, right, that's not a good place to be, right? If you don't trust anybody to do anything, then it's always up to you, and that's just too much pressure to live with. I mean, that's just, you're going to be full of anxiety, you're going to be full of stress all the time. I get onto a plane, I'm going to have to trust the pilot. I'm going to have to trust that they know what they're doing, that they've been through the training, that they're going to be able to get me safely along with everybody else on that plane to where we need to go. So I have to trust them. And if I don't trust them, guess what? I'm going to be miserable that whole flight. And so learning to trust really is a game changer. Another mindset shift that I want to share is going from outcomes to intentions. So outcomes are like what we want to see happen, the result that we are wanting, right? Versus the intention. The intention is kind of what we're putting into it, right? So the intention is better than the outcome because, again, the outcome we can't always control, but the intention we can control. The intention is what we're putting into it, right? So if I'm working really hard, let me think of an example here. Um, hmm. The only thing that's coming to mind is flying my drone. So I've been trying to get better at flying my drones and doing the flips and the tricks and all that kind of stuff. And, the outcome would be to have this, amazing skill and I can do all these, impressive tricks and flips and all that kind of thing to show off, right? That's the outcome that I would like. But the intention is what I'm actually putting into it, right? So my efforts into flying and the enjoyment is actually at that part, right? The enjoyment is the time we put into making it happen, not in the outcome. And I think if we start to see that shift, if we start to see how much more enjoyment and pleasure and peace we get out of the intention of what we put into the process, rather than what we're expecting the outcome to be. If everything we care about is just based on the outcome, then very often we're going to be disappointed because very often the outcome is not what we want it to be, even when it is based on us, right? Even when it is, many aspects of it are things within our control. I mean, we know ourselves, we don't always follow through. We're not perfect. And so a lot of times we fall short, even in our own desires to come to a certain outcome. And so if we reset our mindset so it's more focused on enjoying what we're putting into it rather than what we're getting out of it, I think that's really going to change things. Madroxide, good to see you here. The point you're making about trust could definitely tie into what you were talking about in the previous Tom talk about expectations. Yes, absolutely. A lot of similar changes to be made when controlling both of them. Yeah, for sure. And yeah, so I'm glad you saw that connection too. Yeah, because there's a lot of similarities there. And control is kind of, yeah, I wanted to go a little bit deeper into that because I do think it's kind of an underlying part of the expectations, right? So yeah, thank you for pointing that out. So we've talked about shifting from control to trust, shifting from outcomes to intentions. And then another one I want to talk about, there's four in total. Another one is resistance to acceptance. And so if we're talking about those things that are on that outer part of the circle, right? The circle that's out of our control, right? Things that we have no ability to affect. Learning to accept instead of resist. Now, that doesn't mean that we are always happy with those outcomes, that we're always happy with how things are. It's okay if we're not, if it's not what we were hoping for, if it's not what we were working towards, if it's not what we would prefer. But if we continue to resist that, if we continue to reject that, if we continue to try to move against that, then really in most cases we're just hurting ourselves, right? Because we're accepting the way things actually are instead of the way we would like them to be. And to a certain extent, right, we kind of have to do that. There are things we can't change. There are things that are going to be how they're going to be, and learning to accept that and then adapt to it, right? And that's an important distinction, right? Not just acceptance, but adapting to it, meaning that, hey, this is how things are now. So what am I going to do in light of that? What am I going to do in response to that? I still have control over me. So what am I going to do in my response to the way things are? And so first, I have to accept the way things are. And once I do that, then I can start to decide how I want to respond, how I want to react, and any changes that I might need to make accordingly. And so if I'm continuously resisting it and not accepting it, then I'm never going to be able to adapt. I'm never going to be able to change something in my reaction to it accordingly. So if we move from resistance to acceptance, then we actually have an advantage in that, right? There's an advantage in accepting it because then we can adapt and change along with it. And then the final mindset shift is moving from force to flow. And I kind of like this one, moving from force to flow. And basically what that means is instead of trying to make things the way I want them to be all the time, finding how things are flowing. And by that, I mean, like a lot of times we go through different kind of seasons of life. Different things are going on in our lives at different times, many of them out of our control, right? And so instead of constantly fighting and pushing and forcing things to go the way that we want them to go, right? Finding ways that we can go and move along with the way things are going, right? Going with the flow. And we use that phrase a lot, right? Going with the flow. I'm just a person that likes to go with the flow. What does that mean exactly? Well, a person that kind of accepts how things are and is leaning into that and can work within that new framework of reality. And so what might that look like? So let's say, it's summertime right now. So maybe our life pace changes a little bit. Maybe we're not doing the same things we were doing before. Maybe we're spending more time inside because it's so hot outside. And so what are we going to do now? Maybe we want to spend more time with our family. So we find indoor things to do. Or maybe you're going out to the lake or going out to the river or whatever. So think about like how your life might be different during different seasons, right? And I don't mean like literal seasons like fall, winter, and summer and that kind of thing, but just things that are going on in your life right now. Think about what kind of circumstances you find yourself in, and then how can you go with the flow in that, right? Instead of trying to force things, and maybe it's just not the right time for that thing to happen right now, instead of trying to force it, think about what would be less, what would have less resistance, right? How could I go with the flow with this and find a way to still thrive, find a way to still do what I want to do and kind of create the life I want for myself while still moving in the direction that things are going, right? And so I think a lot of that, it kind of wraps it all together, right? Because it involves us having trust, it involves us accepting, Um, and it involves our intention. So, like, kind of all these mindsets together, I think, kind of come together in this last one of moving from force to flow. So, I hope that makes sense. That one was a little out there, I know, but I just liked that idea of kind of going with the flow with things. So, let me know what you think about that one in the comments. And then I want to, before we wrap up, I want to include some more practical things. So those are kind of some mindset shifts that I think are good for dealing with control in kind of in a healthier way. But then what can you like actually do? Like what are some tools that you can implement? So that's what we're going to talk about in this last section here. Tools to release control. So what are some things that you can do? And maybe you have your own. So if you have something that you like to do that kind of helps you to let go of things that are outside of your control, do please share. And I'm going to share some of mine. So, first, I think it's good to just identify what it is that you're carrying, right? What it is that you are holding on to that you need to let go of. And so, as we've been talking through this, maybe there's something that's come to your mind. Maybe as we've been talking about this, you're thinking, man, yeah, there's this one area of my life. I've just really been holding on to it. I've been really trying to create this certain outcome, and it's been a source of frustration and anxiety for me. That's the thing you need to start learning to let go of because so often I think we do this almost on a subconscious level where we don't realize it. And so the first step is just identifying it, realizing, hey, this is something that I've really been trying to control that I actually have no control over, and I need to let go of that. I need to release that. And so step one, identify it. And then you can also practice this kind of mental exercise. So imagine two different boxes, right? One box says, not mine. And then the other box says, not now. And so if you have things that you're trying to do, right, and you're coming up against that frustration and that kind of resentment, all those things, those negative emotions that surround that thing that you're trying to control, then it goes in one of those boxes, right? It either goes in the not mine, right? This is not mine to carry. I'm not responsible for this. I need to put it in that box. And so just imagine yourself mentally taking it, labeling it, and putting it in that box to be put away. Or maybe it needs to go in the not now box. Maybe this is something that eventually you'll be able to do, but maybe now is not the time. So you can put it in the not now box and put it to the side for later. Maybe this is something that's going to come up later in the future, but it's not something you need to worry about now. And I find this to be helpful for myself because if you're like me, I tend to worry about all the things at the same time, right? And sometimes the crazy thing is that one thing can lead to another thing, right? So I start worrying about one thing and I'm like, oh yeah, I also need to do this. Oh yeah, and I also need to do this thing. Oh yeah, and don't forget that. So I like start compounding all the things that I need to worry about. And it just stresses me out and I get overwhelmed and it's like, oh, I can't do any of these things. Instead, I can separate them out, right? Which of these things do I actually need to focus on right now? Which one of these things is not mine to worry about? And I can put this away because that's somebody else's concern. That's not within my control. So I'm going to put that in the not mine box. Or maybe I need to put it in the not now, right? This is something I'm going to have to deal with, but I don't have to deal with it right now. This can be something for a later time, maybe even tomorrow, but just not right now. And I find when we do that, it kind of clears up our kind of mental energy and our ability to focus on what it is that's truly important in that moment. Another tool you can use is journaling and prayer, right? So, journaling and prayer. So, if you're a person that prays, I think it's a tremendous opportunity to include that in your prayer life, to talk about those things in your prayers and kind of use that as a time of discernment. And then also journaling, right? Actually take the time to write out your thoughts, write out the things that you are trying to control. And that can even be the prompt, right? What am I trying to control right now? Is this something I need to let go of? Is this something that is not mine to carry? And then as you write through that, you can kind of process that information that helps kind of make things a lot clearer for us as we write it out. And then I think even creating rituals can be good because not all control is bad. I think having control over certain things gives us a certain amount of comfort. And I find that a lot of times when we get into situations where we feel more out of control, right? We're in a situation where things just feel chaotic and so much is outside of our control. We really start to grasp for those things that we can control. And sometimes that ends up being unhealthy, depending on what it is that we try to control. And so if we find the things that are healthier, right? Find those control rituals, those things that you can control in your life to have that sense of normalcy, to have that sense of routine, to have that sense of, okay, I'm in control of my day going a certain way. I'm going to get up, I'm going to have my morning routine, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, right? Whatever those things are that you want to do for yourself on a consistent basis to be able to have that sense of control, I think can be good, right? That creates a kind of a positive feeling for you to be able to have that sense of control in your life. And I try to do the same thing for my life, right? I try to have those kind of rituals that allow me to have that control on a consistent basis, right? So even when things get chaotic, even when things seem crazy, right, I kind of still have my baseline. I still have those things that I'm able to control. So I hope this has been helpful to you. Do please share your own thoughts in the comment section. I'd be interested to hear from you. Maybe there's some areas that you're working on in your life that you are trying to let go of, things that you have been wanting to control, but no, you shouldn't be. And then if you want help with that, a lot of times just being able to have a conversation with someone else, being able to kind of echo those things, reflect those things. That's one of the things that a coach is really good for. And so when I've done work with clients, that is an opportunity, right, for them to be able to kind of share those things and then have it reflected back. And I find it can be very helpful. So if you're interested in that, I'd love to offer you a gifted session for you to try it out and see what you think. And so if you're interested in that, yeah, do please reach out to me. I'll leave my email address in the description. And then also, if you're interested in a handout, I created a handout to go along with this episode that kind of will take you through these different things that we talked about, the mindset shifts and these different tools that we discussed, and kind of create a way for you to process through that on your own, if that's something you would like. Also, just send me a message through my email and I will send that to you. Hope you guys are having a great one. I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next one. Have a good night.